to meet you.
Welcome. I see you guys are the smart ones that chose this session out of the other 13. So I don't know if it was which word here, but maybe we're the most human. Human was the only one in the session that had the title. My name is Doug. I am the head of design over at the Digital Data Design Institute, DQ. And welcome to campus if you are visiting us here today. The Digital Data Design Institute. So those are the 3 Ds that make up what we do as an institute. And the first 2 kind of make sense. We want to use data, that's so essential for AI, to drive digital transformation. But the third one there is kind of weird. Why is design part of this? And one of the important things that we wanted to do, our Dean Treatcott really pushed us and challenged us to be human-centered in the research that we do. Because we could do all these cool digital and data projects, but because of the power of technology, we can actually move the world in a worse direction. And so that's why design is a crucial part of our mission as an institute. And so we have seen in previous generations of technology how this has gone wrong when we don't keep the human-centeredness in the picture. And now we have to deal with the harms of the last wave of technology transformation. And so rather than trying to do it after the fact, let's do it before the fact. And that's what we want to really embrace as an institute as we do our research. And so that's why we're here. And we want to bring excellent folks like we have here as our panel. And we have a mix of people from both industry as well as from our research labs. And that's the goal of our institute, is to do the translation of science into industry and industry practice into science. And so we have Roger here, who's joining us from BP, one of the first design leaders there at BP. We have Firdosh joining us from one of the leading design agencies, Fantasy. We have Jackie joining us from our Laboratory for Innovation Science. And we have Mike here, who we're actually working on a case, writing a case on what we're about to demonstrate to you today, on how do you use AI to augment the design innovation process. And so when we say design, oftentimes people equate that to graphic design or web design. What we mean by design is its way of thinking and a way of approaching the business problems that we have. So this conference is all about AI. When I teach undergraduates about where can they make an impact in their lives, I often use this framework. And this framework comes from Humans Plus Machines, a book that HBR published. And oftentimes they say, hey, there's things that machines are really good at, and then there's things that humans are good at, and it's the augmentation in the middle. But with generative AI, it's put all of those things in question. As you can see, this book was published only in 2018, and now we're having questions around empathy and creativity. Are those human skills, or can machines do them? And so to open up the session, I'm curious, just to hear from this group, and this may be a biased, sampling bias here, but can AI be creative?
Yes.
Yes? Who says yes? Who says no? Who wants to be contrarian? Okay, what's our contrarian thought here?
I think most of AI, which has come from machine learning, has come from past experience.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with left brain. And I think ultimately creativity is an overdose of the right brain and innovation. So I think that if humans have a chance with AI, it's if humans develop the right brain.
Yeah. So there's a question, right? So what is creativity? Is it something that can be derived from numbers and digits? Or is it something uniquely human, the right brain side of things? Who else? Anyone else say no? Yeah.
I've been challenged by the example this morning of the Wharton class, where they were asked to come up with 10 new ideas from the example in the first lecture this morning. And that seems like creativity, right? Because it's being judged by humans. And so the question is sort of what are the criteria that the humans are using to judge? So I'm challenged by that example because I basically believe that it's not creative. Creativity is something new.
Yeah.
And the rehashing of things that have been collected from the past is context, it's information, it allows perhaps prediction, but it isn't new. We think new is the realm of humans, but I'm definitely challenged by this example of the machine coming up with better new ideas than the students. So I want to dig into that some more.
Yeah, that's interesting. Novelty, right? What's the element of novelty in creativity? Who said yes? Who feels like they're squarely in the yes camp? Yeah.
From a musical background, I am building off of consistent ideas from songs and musicians that I admire from the past, and those recombinations oftentimes are, creativity. And I think that it's those recombinations that sometimes we see similar ideas pop up in different parts of the world, and sometimes taking those really big jumps. That's creativity too, but I think that the recombination is an element of creativity that's reliable.
So we have an interesting tension here, right? Humans and novelty, but what you're saying, creativity is being able to take things and put them together, mash them together into different recombinations. Right? So Jackie's going to actually share a little bit more about the study around how she found the role of creativity and AI. But what about this question? This question's even more interesting. What about empathy? Can AI be empathetic? Who says yes? Oh, less hands. Interesting. Who says no? All right. What's your thinking here around why can't empathy? What's your thinking around why AI can't be empathetic?
So for the first question, when we said creative, I said yes because we need human interface for it to be creative. With empathetic, I said no because I don't know how to put it in words.
You couldn't find yourself.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Empathy is a hard one.
Yeah.
Can you add to that? Yeah.
I feel like it's learned. Right? Like I mean, there's a lot of people who lack empathy.
Yeah.
Right, and for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But I do think that you can learn to be empathetic. So if you can learn to be empathetic, I believe that a system can learn to either mimic or actually be.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So we actually have some research hot off the press from our digital emotions lab that showed that AI was able to actually give humans better advice. So it was like, oh, my friend didn't show up to my birthday, and AI was actually able to give better emotional reappraisal advice from that. And then they did a second study, and they incentivized that 150% just to see if it was just lack of effort, and the AI is still improved as well. And about a year ago, there was actually a JAMA study where they put doctors against AI, and both in terms of accuracy, but also bedside manner, that the AI performed better. I don't know if that's more of an edict on AI or doctors, but, so it'll be quite interesting question. So what we'll be showing today is some synthetic humans, and how do you apply some of this to to how we do design innovation and doing some market and user research. So I'm going to hand it off to Roger. Roger's going to give us a little bit of context around this design sprint that we did, and how does design work within BP, which doesn't seem like those two things go together as well. So how does the role of human-centered design play in the sustainability and digital transformation efforts at BP?
Thank you, Doug. Hello, everybody. Great to be here with you all. So I think it's a great question, and just maybe some background, right? Because he said those things seem to not go together well, and so just a little bit about myself. So my name is Roger Rohatgi. I'm the vice president and global head of design at our company, and I am, like Doug mentioned, oddly the first design person and design leader in their 100-year history at this company. They have had, when I came in, a lot of designers, but they were all through third parties and through partners and so forth. We never had anybody from a perm perspective. So they had hundreds of designers and thousands of designs, and digital designs, but nobody doing design, big design, and organized design. And so I spent the last 25 plus years now in the design space and all sorts kind of different types of design, television and film. I wrote and produced a film that won an international film award to all sorts of kind of interesting things in interactive television. We partnered with Mark Burnett to create social TV here in the United States, and Mark created Survivor, The Voice, and some of those shows. If anybody follows his work. But I saw that as my career grew, digital began to rise, and more mobile and UX. they didn't call it UX back in the day. We didn't call it user experience, by UX. It was just something that we learned. I remember creating a website. It was a Flash website way back in the day, and it was the most amazing website. It opened up, you would click it, had all these sound effects, special effects, it would move, and had all this motion. But in the US back then, there was no high-speed internet, so it was just dial-up. So it took 15 minutes to load that website. So I always say I created the most amazing website as a young creative director, and that amazing website is an amazing website that no one ever saw. And I learned about user experience, right? So we had to put notes there like, hey, grab a coffee and come back in 15 minutes, it'll load tomorrow. And we had this thing where let's put an indicator. Nobody called it a loading wheel or loading bar. That didn't exist, right? So we were working on that early stage stuff. And as that things evolved, I got a chance to be involved in more and more of that work. But it was an interesting time to see that rise. And as things evolved in design and in digital, mobile became a big thing, and then all of a sudden, everybody was wanting more and more e-commerce and all these things. And so as we moved into that, when BP reached out to me at the end of 2019 to come into the company, I was like, wait, they had pinged me on LinkedIn, and I said, well, why do you need somebody like me? And they said, well, we're going through this massive digital transformation. And we have all this cool technology that we need help with, and we have XR, MR, VR, robotic dogs. They have robots going up pipes and through different different areas. And I said, wow, that's amazing. And they said, we're going through this massive digital transformation, and we need people to come help us. And I said, well, great. Well, how are you putting humans at the center of all that? Right? How are you designing for humans and not just technology's sake, right? And they said, well, we actually need help with that. So I decided to leave the tech world and design world to come into this company to help them. And what got me excited was it wasn't just a transition of a digital transition, but it was also an energy transition. So not only are they going through a massive digital transformation, but they're going through a huge energy transition in the world. And so when I came into the company, they had announced that we'd march toward net zero by a certain date. And I started thinking about not just how you combine social with television back in the day, but how do you combine design and sustainability and use these technologies for humans, right? Because that's what this is about at the end of the day. And so part of what I started to realize was we need to accelerate the way that we're doing design here at our company. And I oversee about 200,000 interfaces, and there's literally thousands of apps across B2B, B2C, and people on trading floors to people in the ocean and assets, rigs, to even our airfield automation. Solar fields, wind farms, biofuels in different areas, and it's quite vast. We own multiple companies. We own a coffee company. And they all need better experiences, and they all need to accelerate how they reach their customers or how we reach the world and how do we make that transition. And so AI is a big part of that. And so part of the opportunity was to see how we could take human mimicry and what we're doing in research and combine that with AI insights. And so when we started chatting with Firdosh and his group of fantasy and Doug here at Harvard, we started realizing that we could take some of this work here and 100+ different distinctive traits and begin to build what I kind of look at it as digital twins of our customers. And so at the end of the day, we as a company have been looking at using AI for digital twin technology for our operations, things that we have out in the ocean and different areas so that we can understand and learn and keep our people safe and so forth, right? But we also, I started realizing, we need to get close to our customers through research. But we can't always get to them. We have a lot of internal customers and we have a lot of external customers. And so how can we actually build a way for us to be able to reach them if we can't get to them at any time? And so you're going to hear about how we did that and then where that could go from there. And so one of the things we started exploring is not just can AI be empathetic, but when we start realizing these, how we can build these synthetic humans, one of the questions started coming into my mind was, can we as humans be empathetic for AI? And what does that look like?
Yes.
And how do we think about them? And what do they need? Just as much as they may be working on what we need. And so it's a totally different twist on that. So that's been part of the journey. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Firdosh, who I guess is going to explain a little bit more about the research that we were working on and the sprint that we're doing. But just want to say that the traditional level of design, we start with empathy. And if you look at design thinking, we go through a process of ideating and diverging with different thoughts and coming back together and testing that and iterating upon that and really getting deeper into understanding that research and how we design better for people and humans. And that takes time. But if we can accelerate that, and if we can leverage AI to get us even further and to get even deeper insights, augmented with our human abilities, then that's something worth taking a look at. And Firdosh will talk to you a little bit more about that.
Thanks, Roger. Hi, everyone. As Doug mentioned, my name is Firdosh Tangri. I'm the CEO at Fantasy. I started working on this presentation, realizing this morning when I was going through it, it was taking me just 40 minutes just to talk to the slides, so I had to cut it down. So I'm going to go through a very condensed version for you guys on what we did with BP and then talk a little bit more about synthetic humans and how we use that during the AI innovation sprint. So at Fantasy, what we have is we have an innovation sprint, basically, which helps our clients to figure out what the North Star is, right? Whether it's working with Marriott to understand how do they go from a hospitality to a travel company, or it's Audible and how they go from a story and audiobook company to a storytelling company. We kind of created this thing called the innovation sprint. And then as GenAI became more and more powerful, we started figuring out like how do we augment our innovation sprint with AI. So we created the AI innovation sprint, and Roger was brave and kind enough to do the first one with us, and Doug was with his team following what we were doing. And Roger set this challenge for us, which was to harness the power of AI to craft a potential net zero vision for the future of sustainable smart cities and on-demand convenience and mobility. Now, when I think back about it, it was a big challenge and we shouldn't have gone for something that big. But I think we got some amazing results even with that challenge that we had out there. So our typical future vision process takes anywhere from 10 to 12 weeks as we work with our client partners. With the augmentation of AI, we were able to figure out how to do this in 12 days while still accomplishing some really good results. So this is the standard process, which is doing research review, stakeholder interviews, future analysis, concept card creation, all the way from user testing and strategic readout. And you can see like this is what it looks like on a 10-week schedule. And then if we were able to augment it with AI, we were able to bring it down into. We were hoping to do it 2 weeks because this sounds good, but it went to 12 days. But that's okay. So, and in 12 days, we did 500 plus prompts, 300 plus concepts, 73 real and synthetic humans, and then 120 hours of field work along with 84 AI media assets. So a lot of work compressed in just 12 days. And then if you look at the innovation sprint, this is pretty much what we do, right? We do research and empathy, opportunity identification, idea and concepting, and then validation and refinement. So I can't go through everything that we did in those for all of those activities, but I'll just go through some really quick ones. I'll go through research review and future role analysis a bit quick because I think you guys have been to enough sessions this morning where you've heard about summarization, so I won't go through those basics, but just to kind of tell you what we did in those things out there as well. So research review is basically when we work with a client partner and we want to understand the business. So they'll typically send us a lot of documents. BP is amazing at centralizing all the data. So when we ask them, hey, do you have any documents around this problem you're trying to solve? Roger sent us a folder. There was about 40, 50 documents in there. We were like, okay, this is just going to take us 12 days just to go through all this documentation. So we were able to use the LLMs to kind of create crucial insights from those efficiently, but we also had to make sure there were still humans involved, right? So we started to go through which documents to use, which to synthesize, and how do you kind of get the insights from them. And then obviously because we had the power of LLMs, typically this would take a team anywhere from 3 to 5 days to do that, to kind of go through the documents, really understand what's happening. We were able to do this in a matter of a day or two to create those insight reports, and then the teams were going through it, collaborating already, and then figuring out how did it start the concepting time. So, and in opportunity identification, one of the activities we do is future role analysis. So this is basically us kind of rapidly going through thousands of patent filings, VC investment trends, annual reports, and then trying to figure out there what the future trends are within not just one category, but several categories. And the idea here is to kind of identify where R&D and technology and investment capitals are and where they're headed in the future. So one of the things that we have to do in this is to come up with a list of keywords. And to come up with a list of keywords, that's a manual process. It takes 2 days for a data scientist to kind of go there, look at all the keywords that it's going through, all the data sets in there, and then do that manually. So with LLMs, we were able to do that very, very quickly. And then taking those keywords, we were then creating an exclusion list. And then exclusion list was basically kind of minimizing even the keywords that the LLM came up with. So we were able to bring it down to a very short key list out there. And then when we analyzed the data and filtering it out, you can see we started even with like, about 2 million tweets, and then we narrowed it down to 10,000 relevant tweets. All of this wouldn't be possible before using any of the GenAI tools. This would all take us at least a week or 2 weeks to kind of do this as a manual process. I mean, just using still data scientists to write the Python code, et cetera, out there. So what we learned is you can process complex information sets like patterns. You can enable summarization and comprehension of these data sets. The really interesting thing is that one of the things we couldn't do before when we were doing patents is to look at what's happening in other countries because they are filed in different languages. So now we were able to bring those patents in, convert them into English, and then put them into our data set and then put the analysis on it, which we couldn't do before, which is just amazing to do it now. So. Also do semantic and sentiment analysis on thousands of social media texts that we have out there. And then also, extract expert opinions from thousands of news articles and financial filings. And then basically you can also create these visualization maps, which will help us kind of quickly zero in into what we're looking at. And then into idea and concepting. This was really interesting. So once we had our key teams defined, we started coming up with concepts and ideas. So all the little sticky notes you see, those are all ideas generated by AI. Everything else is done by the BP and the fantasy teams coming with those ideas out there. The way we did it was we gave the same creative brief to different LLMs to see what concepts and ideas they would come up with. But it's interesting because Doug said, can AI be creative, right? And it's more about this human AI collaboration that happens. So there was nothing that the LLM told us or came up with an idea and we were like, oh, you know what? That's amazing. We should use that. It was most of the time the LLMs would come up with some idea. It would help us think a little bit differently, and we'd be like, that's interesting. We would take that idea and then add our context to it and then feed it back into it. And then sometimes it's the other way around. We would get stuck on an idea, and then we'd be like, well, let's see what these large language models think. And we would ask them, like, here's an idea. Here's kind of where we got to. Can you expand on it? So in truly, there are some post-it notes which are AI and human ideas, but I think by the end of it, we didn't know what was happening. We were like, oh, this is a mixture between everything. It's a true AI-human collaboration that was happening out there. One of the few things that we learned when we were doing this is, prompt engineering was, I think, a big thing last year. It still is right now. But I think as LLMs get better, I think the way to prompt it and all those tricks, you won't need them. But the interesting things were when we were creating different prompts, we were doing two things. One, we realized that the more constraints we gave the prompts, the ideas were kind of very generic and they were the same. They were same variations of the same idea. And then if you went the other way around, if you kept it to blue sky, then you would get some really cool ideas, but then you would also get out of category ideas. So there was still this human element where we had to go in and filter all those ideas and figure out which ones are there and then kind of go back and then put them into it out there. And at some point, when we're doing 300 plus concepts, there was a plateau where we were like, okay, it's just kind of coming up with more or less the same out there without giving it more context. So human feedback is really critical. To take the concepts to the next level, we had to talk to Roger and his team who had insights more into VP's past challenges, the recent experiments we did, and then we were able to take that and then elevate, the concepts we had. We also saw the creative output, and just a reminder, we did this AI innovation sprint in last August. So this was GPT-4, Cloud 2. Right now, things are much more advanced. So if you had to do this would be a whole different ballgame. But the things we learned even from there was that, GPT tended to be, a little bit more wordy, while Cloud was about Anthropic's cloud was a lot more visionary. Llama 2 at the time was not that great, but Llama 3, if you guys are playing around with it, it's significantly better right now already. And then basically took those concepts, and what we did is we kind of created the visual storyboard for this, because we were actually testing these concepts with real humans and synthetic humans out there as well. And this also changed the way we were working with our teams, because now, like, we didn't need a visual designer to come in and say, hey, take all of these concepts and then create some visual aspect for it, just from a concept perspective, not the final one. You know, we could have a UX designer or a content person kind of come in and use them to create these images out there. So even within our fantasy team, and we were working together, we saw that interdisciplinary skills were transferable for certain things, which was really, really interesting, because it helped us think about how we're going to change and how we work together as well. And the last part was the real and synthetic humans, and this is where things get really interesting. So we developed a platform called Synthetic Humans. I know it sounds scary, but it's not. This is just the visual aspect of it. We're not building robots or anything of the sort. One of the things that we realize quite often when we're doing and working with our clients, especially on new products and strategies, if they don't have the budget, the first thing they do is like, build the user testing later. What is it? What's the cost without that? And I'll be just like, this is crazy. Like, why would you not do user testing? In fact, you should do it as often. And even large organizations don't do it as often as they should be doing it. So we were trying to figure out is like, okay, how can we not replace traditional user testing with real humans, but how can you augment it so that we're doing it at least more often? So we created a platform from Synthetic Humans, and what we did is during the 12-day research, when we were showing these concepts, we had real humans who we tested the concepts with, and then we created synthetic humans, which are basically versions of themselves, taking their, of course, for privacy's sake, change the names, dates, etc., ages, all that kind of stuff, and then ran the same study with real humans and synthetic humans. So we had a control point to see what responses we got with the real humans, and then we were looking to see if we were able to get similar responses from the synthetic humans. And what that would do is, if you can get similar responses from the synthetic humans, then maybe you can do the user testing more often in between before you test it out with real humans again. So having said that, I'll give you a quick demo into what this platform is. So basically, the way we've designed synthetic humans is we've done large surveys with humans, and all of these synthetic entities that we've created out here, they have these demographics, but they have over 100 psychographics right now. And this could include anything from personality, how they talk, agreeableness, psychographics out there, and it's quite detailed. So these characteristics enable the synthetic humans to respond in a very human way as possible, enabling us to kind of create empathy when we talk to these synthetic humans. And then what we're able to do is then add custom attributes. So for example, if I pick, I think, David Roberts in here, he has additional attributes, which is soccer affiliation. So we work with the MLS, and in there we also had, user personas of what their customer base was. So we took the basic synthetic human profiles and then created additional attributes which are based on their personas. So like whether they like soccer, what they didn't like, etc. out there. And we were able to do the same thing when we were working with BP, and we were talking about future or smart cities and looking at how many people own EV, how many people used on-demand services, and so we were able to model those out. And then obviously we can create in their segments. And then the other thing we do also is create collaborators. So we use synthetic humans for two purposes. One was for user testing, and a lot of the ideas that you saw earlier with the little red post-it notes was synthetic humans working with us on the same brief and coming up with the same ideas out there. So let's just have a conversation with one of them, right? So let's say, hey, Lena, tell me a bit about your kids. So Lena is responding based on her psychographics. So nowhere in her memory have we stored the names of her kids or what her kids like or what they do. That is being, she's saying that, or well, it's being generated. I keep saying she, my wife keeps thinking I'm talking to someone human all the time. It's all being generated based on her psychographics and her profile. So that's a really interesting part out there. So she talks about her two kids. They're both energetic and curious, just like a mom. She can't stop talking about her kids out there. So what this enables us to do is to create empathy. So I can ask even her, like, how is your day going? Working family, but I find little moments to come. So again, none of this is being pulled from any kind of database or any kind of RAG. This is all being generated based on every question I ask her. It's telling the LLM to be like based on a psychographic respond back out there, which makes things really interesting. Now, what this enables us to do is then we can then do a qualitative study, right? So for example, I can go in here and then pick a segmentation, let's say soccer, right? And I can ask them, anyone soccer fans? No one. Oh my God, this is hard. Wait, okay, 1, 2. Anyone watch the MLS? Major League Soccer? Kind of is. All right. Okay. So basically, I can go in here and ask them, how would you rate, let's say, the MLS app on a scale of 1 to 10? Who is your favorite? Oh, let me visit. What is your favorite soccer memory? And let's say out here, what features would you like to see in the MLS app? And I can hit Start Survey. Now, you can see it'll go through the entire segmentation, and then based on that, you'll start seeing responses out here. The idea is not that, hey, let's take this, and based on this, create a strategy. What this helps us do is it helps with divergent creative thinking, right? Because you're looking at and something will spark, and you'll be like, oh, that's kind of interesting. So for example, for MLS, one of the things, well, we didn't run it with soccer enthusiasts. If you ran it with urban, which is a general population, their answers were very different. And one of the things we kind of realized when we were running this survey is that Lena, who has 2 kids, one of them likes soccer. And she's like, I'm not a soccer fan. I don't watch MLS. But because my older son is into MLS and soccer, I'm watching it now. And that's a segmentation we never thought about. We were like, wait, what about soccer moms who are kind of like, because they want to bond with their kid, they want to watch soccer, and we're not even, thinking about them. So just by running this test sometimes can help you start thinking a bit differently out there. And then also you get sometimes some very obvious answers, so you can tweak your questions because, to do like full user testing can cost a lot of money. It can cost from 10 grand to $100,000. So if you can fine tune it by running it with these synthetic humans, it's a huge advantage. So you can see out here, just while I was talking, it's going through over here and it's generating all of these responses, which is really, really interesting. And then basically at the end of it, it will do like a whole insights and summary as to, what was the favorite soccer memory, what can they do, how did they rate the app, how you can make it better. You can then feed that information, or you can take information from MLS, what they have, feed it into these synthetic humans, and then have them run it again to get really, really interesting insights. And then the other thing we also kind of did was this whole concept of ideation. So this is kind of a bit standard. We have a content collaborator, which we created. So you can see out here we have, content collaborators, UX collaborators, and we can create them based on trained data. But the interesting thing is when there's collaboration happening over here. So if I just said, how do we improve the guest experience for Legoland? So what I've done out here is there's 2 synthetic humans. There's Ashley, who is the lead experience designer, and has deep expertise in user experience design. And there's Jason, who's a product manager with over 20 years of experience. And just like I would have a brief, I would give it to them, and off they go. So this is going to be Jason and Ashley. So Jason's going to come up with some ideas, and Ashley is going to critique them. And then Ashley will take those ideas, and then Jason will critique them. So this will be really interesting to see what kind of ideas come up with there. The interesting thing is that when we were doing brainstorming sessions, we would do them after like 2 hours, 3 hours, like human creativity goes down and you're exhausted. So we go for a lunch break. And then when you come back, you're like, oh, wait, what did we do with the Post-it notes? What were the cool ideas we had? Let's rearrange everything, right? But now when we come back, not only do we have that because the AI has synthesized our past ideas, but they have come up with fresh new ideas within the lunch break we have. And then we come back, we're like, oh, look at all this stuff. And we start with right where you came from, right? So you can see out here, Jason's come up. They're looking at their ideas by understanding current guest experience in Legoland. They have a score towards it. Then Ashley's responding back on how to take it to a step further. And this can keep going on, right? So I think at some point she's like, we could implement Internet of Things technology to enhance guest safety and convenience. For instance, wearable of IoT devices could be used for contactless payments. Now, some of these ideas are kind of very generic. There's nothing novel in there. But the thing is that the more you keep taking that and you feed it back into them saying like, well, these are all novel ideas. Don't think about wearable devices. Don't think about this. Then it forces them to think differently. So you can kind of push it to kind of come up with some more ideas, the more context you give it. But this is a really interesting thing. And we're trying to see out here, like, how does autonomous, brainstorming work, with humans collaborating with it. And then the last one where I showed you guys, let me go in here. Oh, one more thing that we constantly get asked as well is, let me go back into here. So as you guys saw, that Lena was just really nice, right? She's a really sweet lady and she speaks very nicely. But if I say to her, hey Lena, so she's very pissed off because already she doesn't like her service and she's complained about it. And if I'm a really bad rep, I'll be like, I have no updates. And then you can see now her tone's changing. She's like, this is really frustrating. I was expecting some progress on this issue. What are the next steps then? And I can be a really, really bad rep. And I say, all right. So the applications of synthetic humans are, just way too many. We've had healthcare clients come to ask us and say, can you give synthetic humans diseases? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And then we had, people saying like, can synthetic humans get angry? And when they asked me, I didn't understand why they were asking me that. But, now you don't have to give a manual to a sales rep person, right? You can be this out there as well. And then this is the last one. I know Doug's getting up almost off of my time, so we can basically take the visual concepts we did and show it to them and ask them on what they think about it. And that's how we were doing also user testing with concept ideation on the sprint. So that's all the Synthetic Humans platform. I'll stop talking, and Jackie, I think you're up next. Oh, sorry.
Firdosh and Roger. So that's just one of the examples of how we try to learn from industry. One of the things that we're trying to do as an institute is not get stuck in our ivory tower, and we want to learn from some of the great things that are happening in industry as it rapidly evolves. This is an unrelated study, similar topic around the circular economy, but using AI as part of the crowdsourcing model. And so I'll pass it off to Jackie to talk about the study and how we approached it from the academic research perspective.
Thanks, Doug. So I'm here to talk about generative AI and creative problem solving. And in case you are suffering from that lunch break problem that Firdosh talked about, I'm going to give you a quick recap of what we talked about before lunch. So we saw that generative AI continues to redefine the boundaries of what's possible, right? So, it's acing professional exams, translating between languages seamlessly, probably sometimes better than a human translator. It's creating songs like this one that you're listening to right now. And then, near and dear to my heart is it's even augmenting human performance. And we saw this through the influential study that was done by some of my colleagues, Kareem and Edward and Fabrizio, who are here with us at HBS. And fun fact, I did a postdoc with Kareem before joining the faculty. But, this is all wonderful and it shows the performance and productivity gains of using AI. But the question that we're here to address today, and Doug mentioned it, is can AI be creative? And as an innovation scholar who studies those early phases of coming up with ideas and then also evaluating them, I wondered whether generative AI was capable of creative problem solving. And it's not just for those tasks that are well-defined with clear-cut solutions, but can it be creative on open-ended, messy challenges, such as those that BP might be trying to solve, that don't have, well-defined solutions or answers and need out-of-the-box thinking, right? And so this was the question that we set out to solve. And we thought that, wow, generative AI is trained on these multifaceted and diverse data sets, right? That it provides this alternative approach to coming up with a whole bunch of ideas really, really quickly. And so could it emulate, the creativity of not just, a few individuals or a team of individuals, but the massive crowd, right? A crowd of problem solvers who are coming from around the world to bring these unique perspectives on the problem. And I think we started out this session with a bit of skepticism. Some people thought, yes, AI or generative AI can be creative, and other people thinking, I'm not really sure. And so we weren't really sure either, and that was the problem that we wanted to figure out. And so what did we do? Well, we launched a crowdsourcing challenge on the circular economy and asked for good ideas for solving problems in the circular economy. And so the circular economy is an economic system that emphasizes reuse and regeneration of materials in an environmentally sustainable manner. And why do we choose the circular economy? Well, because it's a messy problem and it doesn't have clear-cut solutions, and it's going to require a bunch of technological innovation in order to achieve. And so what we did was we went out to the human crowd on Freelancer and asked for all of their best ideas on the circular economy. But we weren't done because we also had to compare those to prompt engineering with GPT-4 from the comfort of our own homes. And so once we got all of our ideas back, we then went out to human evaluators and we asked them to judge the novelty, which we define as the originality of these ideas, their value, which is the likelihood that they can deliver financial impact and also environmental impact, and then, of course, their creativity. So what did we find? We saw that those AI-generated ideas can match the creativity of the human crowd. So these are the global solvers that came into our global challenge around the world. They can match the creativity. But creativity, we often think of it as having two dimensions. It's the production of novel and valuable ideas. And so remember how we had that skepticism in the beginning? This is what this tension is what we saw as well. And so let me give you an example here to really illustrate this. And so what you see here is the scatter plot of the mean value and the mean novelty of our ideas. So blue is human and orange is AI. So what do you notice? Well, the first thing is that human ideas have higher output variability. And so you'll see there that the human ones that are blue are lesser in terms of their value. We have some outliers at the bottom end of the distribution. And then we also see that the human ones also have some outliers at the top end of the novelty distribution. So what if we looked at the most novel solution, the most novel idea? Do we think it's humans or AI generated? AI, you think it's AI? Okay. Well, the most novel idea actually came from a human, and I'm going to summarize it. So this was the idea that every single that shot out as like the most novel idea. So basically, the idea is that the construction industry has an air pollution problem. And the way that this person was going to address it was to create innovative bricks that were made of foundry dust and waste plastic and no water. And it was going to be 70% reusable. And it would feature this Lego-like interlocking design. So this was the most innovative human idea as rated by our judges. And also, by the way, our judges included experts. But in terms of the most valuable idea, this is the one that actually came from AI. And we'll unpack this in a moment. So this idea was that there's a food waste problem in restaurants, supermarkets, and households. And the way that we're going to address it is to convert it into biogas through these bioenergy centers. That's going to reduce the landfill methane emissions. So this idea actually came from AI. And when we performed statistical analyses on all of the ideas that you saw in that scatter plot, we end up seeing that while humans came up with those most innovative ideas, including those at the top end of the distribution, it was AI that came up with the most valuable ones. And so what does that really mean? Well, if you think about it from purely a cost and a time perspective, and I think Firdosh mentioned this as well, AI did this with $27 in 5.5 hours, and we generated thousands of ideas. And this is just a fraction of the time and cost that it took to organize a crowd, incentivize them, await them to process all of these contributions. And so there's this huge opportunity to bring AI into the loop for this idea generation process, right? And you can imagine there being this human and AI collaboration. Similar to what Firdosh said, it's at some point maybe it's not clear who's creating these ideas anymore. But one potential pattern that you might see if you think about our results is that humans might come up with the novel ideas, and then AI can come in and refine them to improve their value. And that could be one form of human AI collaboration. But there's many others that are yet to be imagined. The other question, though, is what are the implications for the rest of the innovation process? Because we're really just looking at idea generation here. And what would happen to the other parts to bring us to innovation? And so to really get an understanding of this and to see if organizations and platforms were seeing this influx of ideas that were coming in, that were going to change their distributions of their ideas, I started to talk to different platforms, accelerators, ideation platforms, entrepreneurship platforms. MIT Solve is one of our partners, and they are a social impact platform that launches these global challenges from around the world. And so what have they seen, and what did I learn from this process of talking to different platforms? Well, if you think about the distribution of your ideas in this pre-ChatGPT world, so you have your number of ideas on the y-axis, and your x-axis is the quality. This is what it used to look like. What we're seeing today is this increase, is the orange, the increase in the number of ideas. MIT Solve this year saw a 2.5 increase in the number of submissions of plausible startups that are coming and wanting to be a part of their platform. The quality is also increased. It's becoming much harder to screen many of these ideas because AI can refine these ideas and make them look high quality submissions. And so these are some of the things that platforms that globally are facing today. And the thing, though, is there's two problems that this creates, because the first thing is that as the number of ideas increase, this goes beyond our human capabilities to process them all. How are we supposed to process thousands and thousands of ideas that all look really, really good and sound really convincing? That's a really tough problem. And the second thing is we're still limited in our resources, and we're only going to fund or to mentor or train only the best ideas. So what do? So our solution, and what we're working on at our research group at the Lab for Innovation Science at Harvard, is now coming up with ways for us to screen and select these ideas using AI. And our early insights say that AI does a pretty good job when you have a set criteria and you're just trying to screen these ideas to figure out which ones make it past that quality threshold so that it can go on to the next stage of the process. And the key finding that we are seeing is that what AI is enabling us to do is to basically recalibrate human screeners or human works, because we're not used to seeing such high quality ideas. And so it's essentially making us more stringent in our decisions, because it's coming up with recommendations that are more stringent than what we would have not necessarily thought in this pre-ChatGPT, pre-generative AI world. And so perhaps just to conclude, the innovation process has several phases, from ideation, evaluation, screening, all the way to innovation. And so the question going forward is, how do we integrate AI into each of these phases so that we can take those exciting ideas and translate them and transform them into high impact innovations? So that's all I had. Thank you.
I'll talk. I'm going to talk quickly, and then we'll take questions from the audience in just a few minutes. It's very interesting so far. Thank you to all the great speakers. And it's an interesting idea, ChatGPT, and the idea of knowledge versus creativity. And anyone ever see Oppenheimer, the movie?
Yes.
Yeah. So Richard Feynman was in it. Anyone know who Richard Feynman was? Yeah. So Richard Feynman, he's a 25-year-old. He's in the movie as a 25-year-old. Doesn't even have his PhD yet, and becomes one of the preeminent physicists in the world. And back then, in the 50s and 60s and 70s even, we used things called blackboards. Actually, at HBS, we still use blackboards. And if you went into a STEM person's office, oftentimes, my dad was an academic, so I would see this, oftentimes they say, do not erase, right? Don't clean this blackboard. I'm in the middle of a problem, and I don't want to erase it, because we use blackboards. And someone had the foresight. When Richard Feynman died, very famous physicist, he did Space Shuttle Challenger exploration and realized the O-rings were the things that froze. But when Richard Feynman died, someone had the foresight to go in and photograph his blackboard. And it said, do not erase. And he had a quote on the top. And you can Google this. It's a fascinating photo to Google and look up. Just say Richard Feynman's blackboard when he died. And at the top, it says, know the answer to every question that's ever been asked. Was the precursor to ChatGPT, because everything else is a derivative, right? Why spend your time? He was trying to be very efficient. Why spend your time answering old questions? Start from the answers and build upwards. And that's easy to do with general physics knowledge. Very hard to do, I think, with creativity. What does it mean to know all the creative stuff that's ever been done, or all the UX that's ever been designed, right? How do you build up from that? So it's interesting. This idea of ChatGPT, I think Feynman had it. It's like, know all the answers and just start anew from it. But I don't know how we do that with creativity. But my question for Roger is, what happened when Firdosh left? He gets to take his toys and go somewhere else. And I have to say that when I got involved, I was like, oh, here's 12 days of Zoom meetings. I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to do 12 days of Zoom meetings. And I didn't go to every one. I went to Design Sprint, I went to like every other day or so. It was so invigorating and so exciting because so much got done. Like you'd skip a day and you come back like, wow, they did so much. What a wonderful way of using AI and getting the creative spin into rocket space. It was amazing. But when Firdosh left, was your team energized? Like what was it like that you had 12 days of just such excitement and then it went away?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think going into it, we were already excited, and my teams are already like really hyper focused on how we design. And so I think when Firdosh's team came in, it was a natural converging of minds, right? So there was a lot of equal sparring going on of thought, leadership and different things contributing in there. So it wasn't that like when Firdosh left, we were like blown away and then we were left with something. We just continued to carry on of the stuff that we were already building upon. So this was a major build upon where we were already at. But I think what was interesting is that it definitely unlocked areas of our minds that we had not been able to, and ideas that we had not been able to explore before.
You sense that the creativity changed?
It was phenomenal. So we had moments, right, epiphany moments where, like, just give you an example. Like here we're talking about digital twins for moving from a digital twin of a refinery or factory or something then to being a digital twin of a customer. We started taking a step back and saying, what if we did digital twins of our whole entire cities? What if we got to a digital twin of our own selves? And what does that look like? And I started exploring what that felt like for my own personal self, right? And I started looking at this concept called multi-potentialites and multi-potentiality, that we all have different needs, wants, and desires, and we also have multiple skills. and imagine a world where we have multiple versions of our own selves. And where it took me in my own mind was I started thinking about, wait a minute, so if I had a version of myself that showed up for me in virtual areas of my life to help me take care of things. They go on Teams calls that I don't want to be on. They handle things like I don't want to do. It pays my bills, does all these things, and it's all working for me. And that actually starts training on my own DNA. And I have multiple versions of myself. What does that look like? And so where it then took me to was imagine then where companies would then have to begin to start marketing to all the different versions of myself in the virtual world, in metaverse world, and different areas, right? I might like to drink, Coca-Cola out here, but I might like Pepsi in that virtual world, right? And different things. And then I started thinking about companies. What if a company would not just hire you for you, but they would hire you for all the versions of yourself that would help augment you? And what would that look like? So this time that we spent together not only unlocked ideas for our own company, but it unlocked things in me that I started thinking about. And the multi-potentiality of what that could be.
Wow. Okay. I got to think about that for a minute. There's a whole Reddit thread on overemployed. I think they was talking about overemployed right now.
My wife says she doesn't want any more versions of me. So.
Well, thank you very much. Let's take it over to Doug. And you want to take any questions from the audience?
Yeah, so any questions for the audience? Yep.
So I know one of the challenges in qualitative research is that the behavior, the preferences that people state are not always the way they behave in real life. So I'm a little curious, as you look at some of these synthetic humans that you're interacting with, do you feel that AI is able to correct for that sort of difference between stated and revealed behavior?
Yeah, so all the synthetic humans have a lot of personality traits. So depending on the personality traits, if it's a person that's open, or depending on the traits, if they're aloof, the responses are quite different. And sometimes we will add in preferences in their psychographic profiles, and we've noticed sometimes that they don't mention it. So, but the personality kind of overtakes the other psychographics. So even though it's programmed like I like Coca-Cola, but if the person is very private, extremely shy, and you just don't give them the options, like you say, okay, these are your two soft drinks, which one you like? Some synthetic profiles will be like, well, I don't like either of these, I like Coke. And then some of them will be like, even though their preference is Coke, they'll be like, no, Pepsi's fine. And so it's really interesting that does happen out there. But you're right, quality research is very tricky. And it's also, people keep saying that, well, the LLMs are biased. But I'm like, well, so are humans, right? There was this interesting conversation I was having with someone who was in Sweden. She was the head of UX and research, and I was showing her the platform. And we asked, one of the mothers, like, what was her routine in the morning? And she's like, oh, I wake up, I drop the kids off to school, I do my yoga, and then I go to work. And she's like, no mother with two kids has time to do exercise in the morning. But it was interesting because, she said, okay, this is never going to work because it's not right. But I had to explain to her, I live in New York City, and when I go down in the gym in the morning, moms of 3 kids are down there exercising in the morning. So it's her bias because, that's the mother she is. She's always after her kids. She wants to make sure she's good. And my wife's the same. My wife will not do anything until the kids are in a good place and everything comes after that. But it was interesting to see because I did tell her well, what about all these moms that I see in the gym in the morning? They do go out there. And then there was this interesting conversation that happened out there. She's like, oh, okay, I get it. So.
All right, sake of time, let's do one more question. Here's a really good one.
No pressure.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Myself?
Yep.
Okay, thanks. Everything you do, this is a question for anyone for grabs, but I'd be interested to hear from Roger, Jackie, Firdosh, and of course, Professor Parzen and Doug. But in all the studies of AI and research you do in the business application, can you recount a major aha moment when you realized, oh, wow, this could do so much? And obviously from the business perspective and from other applications.
Well, yeah, so from business, I mean, obviously it sped up a ton of time, a lot of cost savings here that we were able to do. Those were all like, moments. But I think the aha moments were being able to unlock things and ideas that we hadn't thought of before, like I mentioned. But I think for me personally, so the group that I lead, I call it human experience design, right? It's UX plus CX plus EX, which is that employee experience. You can't have a great customer experience if you don't have a really solid user experience. You can't have a really solid user experience if you don't have a really, tight and authentic employee experience, right? So I call it HX. But what the aha moment for me in all this is that I started realizing that as designers, we are designing for humans, and we're researching based upon what we think humans need, based upon research that we've heard back from humans. But in this world with synthetic humans or AI, you start realizing that now you have AI beginning to design experiences for humans on what they think humans need. So I call that not HX or UX, but it may be the rise of AX, which is artificial experience. And now, to your question and yours, how do we begin to look at that and say, is that good for our companies, and what can we use to accelerate there? Because there's a lot of learning that needs to happen there. But yeah, so these are aha moments that we had, or I had personally, about the rise of AI working to help create experiences for humans, just like a human would create experiences for humans, and now how that can accelerate.
Well, let me jump on that for a minute, though.
Yeah.
C-suite, would C-suite come down and say it's AI designed, so it has to be better than the human, or how does C-suite view that?
No, so and actually, our CEO talks about this a lot, but we really believe that we don't want and we cannot have humans and AI working apart. They have to work together. So we call it human machine teams or humans in the loop. And so there's a massive amount of validation that has to happen from humans in the work that we do, even with AI.
It's not like what Jackie's doing where you're competing. You have an AI UX and a human UX, and some design team is deciding which one.
Right. So we see exactly. So we can look at that, but at the end of the day, humans are going to make the decision on where we go next and how we interpret that data. We really strongly believe that, and that's why we put together this combination of, like I said, human mimicry combined with AI insights, and so you have human machine teams and so forth.
Could you define experience? Define it, because I think we human life versus synthetic life is equal. That's in my opinion. So, however, can you please define two things? One is experience, one is memory.
Yeah, so I think memory might be interesting for you to take.
Sure. Are you talking about like this?
No, because you use a lot on how do you do creativity / design by combining memory based on experience. And then that's how you create things. This is from my understanding. So then I think it's very important for you to define what is experience and what is memory. Because if we can define that, then certainly if, let's say, experience how do you, please define, because I don't want to misinterpret.
No, that's fine. So I think memory in the sense of how we define it for synthetic humans is challenging, right? I mean, even I think the large organizations like OpenAI, and they still haven't figured out like how actually the memory works, right? So for synthetic humans, if you want to make it as closely emulated as humans, it's really difficult because every person's stance of memory is different, right? So you have long-term memory where you have what like you did in your childhood stays with you because there's emotional connections to it. There is entity memory where you remember people's names, dogs' names, etc. And then there's short-term memory where you have this conversation. So from this whole hour-long meeting, you're not going to remember every single thing. You're going to walk away with maybe 2 or 3 key things. And that's the thing is like when we program the synthetic humans is to understand how much did they retain. Because as an AI, they could retain every single word, every single person said in this room, and they can spit it back out. But when you're trying to emulate synthetic humans and do qualitative study, you want to almost tell them to remember certain things and forget certain things. Remember certain things which have some sort of like emotional connection, because maybe there's something that Roger said that struck a chord with somebody and you kind of remember that. Maybe he doesn't remember somebody else. So memory, like the way we're still trying to define it, is very fluid. I don't think anybody's cracked it on how exactly memory works with AI. So.
And unfortunately, we're out of time. So we were talking about this. There's a lot to fill in our times. So please do reach out. Feel free to connect with us. Anyone on the panel. We're going to have for the academics in the room. We're developing a case around this. There's going to be continued research out of the Laboratory for Innovation Science. And we'll also be developing a lot of practitioner pieces so that you can see and apply this to your own context. So we started this session with asking the question, can AI be empathetic? Can it be creative? And I think the more important question is, what does that mean for us at the end of the day? And so hopefully some of the insights that I've shared with you over the last hour changed your thinking and hopefully encourage you to think about what you could do for some of these technologies. Thanks so much for the great time.
Session in Claremont begins at 3 p.m. sharp.